Hey there, welcome to Bible/Chat. Gus, hi. How are you?
John.
Good to
How
see
are
you.
you doing?
Are you having some coffee?
I am.
Very good. That's nice.
I was going to show the mug, but I probably
You better
shouldn't.
not. Okay, so we
Why
have we got a couple of good questions from a friend of ours, Nathan. Shout out to Nathan. He asked a couple of very helpful questions.
He did tell me that you were kind of ghosting him on the questions.
I kind of left it alone because I figured I would ask you, our resident theological expert.
Of course. Yeah.
Okay, so here's our first question. Really interesting. Paul, in Romans 1 and Romans 2, he makes it clear that people who are unbelievers, and even the self-righteous, are aware that they're sinning.
Yeah.
They're aware that they're actually committing sin. And actually their conscience, Romans 2:15, is testifying against them. So they're actually aware of their sin, they're choosing to do it. Even at the end of Romans 1:32, it says, even though they knew that the ordinance of God, that those who do such things are worthy of death, they did them, and they encouraged others to do them as well. So you have this explicit language of knowing sin. And then you have Jesus on the cross praying to his Father, saying, Father, forgive them. They don't know what they're doing.
Yeah.
So here's the question. Is that a contradiction in the Bible, or are there different ideas going on there?
No, there's no contradiction. I really think that the men that did crucify Christ had no idea what they were doing.
In terms of
the
that Jesus was the Messiah,
exactly.
God,
the
what was actually
weightiness
happening.
of that they're actually crucifying God in flesh. And you see that, I mean, we're going through Acts, and why not talk about Acts? Right? You see that when Peter is confronting the people, and he tells them, like, you did this, and you put to death the Lord of life. And you
it's
did
interesting.
This.
He even says, by the hands of godless men, or anamos, those without the law. By men without the law, you put him to death.
Yeah, so you, and I think, and when these people hear this, they're not like, so what? They're like, what do we do?
Oh, no,
like, oh, I didn't know that. Like, I don't think that anyone knew exactly what they were doing.
Well, I mean, the Pharisees obviously understood that he had claimed to be the Messiah.
Yes.
He knew. So
But I think that they went back looking for the Messiah. If that happened on a Friday, on Saturday, they were looking back for the Messiah in the scriptures.
So you would say that those who didn't know what they were doing were the Roman soldiers. Like they knew, maybe they knew it was wrong to kill or whatever. But they're like,
or even some of the Jews that were involved in that big group of people.
The big crowd crying for crucifying.
They had no idea that was actually the real.
They're being
Messiah.
stirred up by the leaders.
Yeah.
So
but even the leaders, I don't think that they knew of the magnitude of what they were
actually
doing.
Happening.
They might have known, oh, this guy, he's doing miracles. He calls, he's claims to be God, but I don't think they truly understood what they were doing. As we think of Judas, right? He doesn't understand until much later, and then that remorse kills him,
takes his life. So this becomes very interesting. So we could have a person who commits a sin. Maybe they know that they're committing the sin, but they don't understand the magnitude of what that sin is. And those two things can be together at the same time. Like philosophically, we're okay with that.
Even us, right? Yeah. You and I sin every day. Maybe,
You.
Yeah, I sin every day. I probably already sinned.
More.
I went home to lunch.
You're sinning right now.
I went to lunch. I mean, we sin all the time, and seldom do we really think, as we're sinning, that we are actually sinning, against the God of the universe, the one that gives us life and breath, and who sent his Son to die for our sin and for us. Yeah. We don't think that way.
We don't understand the depth of that the magnitude of that reality.
And even in the heat of the moment, you're thinking, I'm angry.
Yeah, and I'm right.
And I'm right, of course. So I think that if we think this way as believers who love Christ, imagine the unbeliever who has no...
Particularly a Roman soldier and a Jewish Messiah, he doesn't know. He's just... So the no knowledge...
Or even Paul himself, right? Yeah. As he's persecuting believers, he's thinking, well, I'm doing the right thing here.
He actually says of himself in 1 Timothy 1:14, he says, I acted ignorantly in unbelief. So he just didn't know. He was without knowledge, and so he acted as an unbeliever.
Yeah.
Well, that's super helpful. So the knowledge, there are things that we can know that we're doing that are evil, but the gravity of those things or the magnitude of those realities we might not know. In fact, we often don't know.
I remember talking to this, to that question. Yes, I remember talking to this person with that exactly, some years ago, and she had lived a terrible life.
Yeah.
And she told me, she said, here I was thinking I was expressing myself. I was living this life of constant sin as an atheist, and deep down, as I would go home, I knew I was doing something wrong.
Yeah.
I didn't know what.
Yeah.
I didn't know why.
She just felt guilty.
But in my heart, I knew it was wrong.
Yeah.
I know. I don't know to whose standard, but it was
Something's
wrong.
wrong. Yeah.
And this goes back to Romans, right? They know that they're wrong, and I think that those people that killed Jesus, they knew they were doing something wrong. I don't think that they knew all the way to the magnitude that they're actually, putting to death the Lord of life.
Yeah, that's great. So okay, so then that in some sense, like, kind of, it does kind of explode the meaning of the gospel if you think about it, because like we don't even know the depth of our sin. Like even as believers, we don't know the depth of our sin, but God knows the depth of our sin.
Yeah.
So that's how much Christ has borne for us.
Yeah. And I think that this is why you see that progression that a lot of preachers talk about and commentators about Paul, right? Where he finally at the end of his life, he sees himself as the chief of sinners, or the greatest sinner.
Yeah.
And the more time that goes by, even if you were saved as a relatively young person, you still feel that weight of sin as you're going and thinking through, man, I was an enemy of God.
Totally.
And now I as that song says, I love that part. It says I get to sit at
his table.
At his table. I mean, I totally an enemy, and now, and all that sin is forgiven.
Yeah.
Not just what I did today, but what I'm going to do tomorrow.
Yeah.
And what I did 10 years ago, all of it is forgiven. And to know that our sin is as heinous as it was 2,000 years ago when those people killed the Messiah. It's still sin. It's still against the law, and yet God is giving us so much grace. So that alone should want us worship Him. And
rejoice in Him.
Rejoice,
love Him.
exactly.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, good. Thank you. Well, I hope that's helpful for you, answering one of those questions that shows up as we do our Bible reading. Nathan, thanks for the question. And if you have any other questions, any of you, feel free to email us at info@faithbibleoc.org. Thanks.